So with Cars 3 about to come out, I decided to do my top 10 best Pixar movies. Now, Pixar has been making movies for over 20 years, and out of all the animation studios that are working today, Pixar might be my favorite. Most of their movies have been phenomenal. There have been some bad ones like Cars 2 and Brave, but for the most part, Pixar movies are outstanding and I love them. And out of all the top 10 videos that I have made, this is gonna go down in history as one of the most hardest lists I have ever put together. But let's not waste any more time. Let's get started with my top 10 best Pixar movies. But before I get to number 10, let's start the video with some honorable mentions. A Bug's Life, Cars, Finding Dory, and Monsters University. Alright, that's enough of the honorable mentions. Now, let's get to number 10. And number 10 is Ratatouille. Ratatouille is definitely one of Pixar's most underrated movies. So Ratatouille is the story of a rat who lives in France who wants to be a chef. Okay, on paper, that story makes absolutely no sense, but when you watch the actual movie, it's great, sweet, and funny. Ratatouille has definitely some of the most beautiful animation I've seen in a Pixar movie. Like, there's a scene where Remy, who is the main rat in the movie, there's a scene where he's on top of a building in France and he sees France in nighttime, like the skyline, and it's beautiful. And the animation they put on the food is they make the food look delicious, actually. So I'm sure most of you have, but if you guys haven't seen Ratatouille, I highly recommend you check it out because it's one of Pixar's most underrated movies. Alright, let's move on to number 9. And number 9 is Up. There are some people who say that the first 10 minutes of Up is better than like the entire movie itself. Honestly, I think Up is great, like the whole way through. Great characters, great animation, it's funny. The first 10 minutes in Up is one of my favorite moments in Pixar history. And here's a fact that I'm sure some of you guys may not know. Up was one of the 3 animated movies to be nominated for Best Picture. There's Beauty and the Beast, Up of course, and Toy Story 3. Okay, let's move on to number 8. And number 8 is Wally. Wally is everything that I want in a Pixar movie. It's funny, it's emotional, and it's beautiful. The animation in this movie is outstanding. Like, there's a scene where Wally, who is the robot, he's on a spaceship outside, and he's in space, and he puts his hand up like this, and he like swings like the stars, and the stars go everywhere, and it's gorgeous. The chemistry between Wally and Eve is great. You actually buy their romance, and it's great when they fall in love with each other. So, Wally, just in case if you haven't seen it, which, wow. Just in case if some of you haven't seen it, I recommend check it out, because it's one of my favorite Pixar movies, and it will go down in Pixar history as one of their best movies. Alright, let's move on to number 7. And number 7 is Inside Out. Now, I'm sure a lot of you guys may know this, but before Inside Out came out, Pixar wasn't doing as great as it used to. Cars 2 and Brave got bad reviews from both audiences and critics. They said that both movies were nowhere near as good as Pixar's other filmography, but when Inside Out first came out, everyone loved it, and I love it too. It's funny, it's mature, it's beautiful, and no pun intended, but it's emotional, and Bean Bond's death. I can't think about it without getting all teary-eyed. Inside Out was Pixar's comeback movie, and it's one of the best animated movies of this entire decade. Alright, let's move on to number 6. And number 6 is Monsters, Inc. Growing up as a little kid, Monsters, Inc. was one of my favorite movies as a kid, and it still is today, and it's still one of my favorite Pixar movies. Thanks to Mike and Sully's outstanding chemistry, it feels like a buddy movie, and in actuality, it is. It's a great movie for little kids, because if little kids watch Monsters, Inc., they'll learn to not be scared of the boogeyman or the monster in their closet anymore. Alright, let's move on to number 5. And number 5 is The Incredibles. Yeah, you guys knew this movie would be on here, alright. I remember seeing The Incredibles when I was 4 years old in the theater. And I remember being dramatized by Jack Jack's scene at the end where he turns into this monster. I remember I remember laughing at it, but being dramatized at the same time. The Incredibles is the best Fantastic Four movie that we have gotten. And I am so excited that Pixar is finally making an Incredibles 2, because I've been waiting my entire life for that movie. And the bad news is it comes out in 2018, which is next year. Alright, let's move on to number 4. And number 4 is Toy Story 2. There are people out there who think Toy Story 2 is better than the first Toy Story, or people who think Toy Story 2 is just as great as the first Toy Story. Honestly, I think Toy Story 2 is just as great as the first Toy Story. So, in Toy Story 2, Woody gets kidnapped by this toy collector named Al, and it's up to Buzz and the toys to find him in order to rescue him. And there's something in Toy Story 2 that I can actually relate to, because Woody meets these new toys named Jesse, Bullseye, and Prospector, and he gets into a predicament that you can relate to if he either wants to go to Japan with them or he wants to go with Andy, because you actually feel his problem, because we can all relate to that, because we all have to make tough choices, because we have to make two choices in our life sometimes that, even though it's hard, we have to pick one. Toy Story 2 is not only one of my favorite Pixar movies of all time, but it's one of my favorite animated sequels of all time. What's my favorite animated sequel? Well, wait until we get to number 2. Alright, let's move on to number 3. And number 3 is Finding Nemo. It's not a top 10 best Pixar movies list without Finding Nemo. Finding Nemo was one of the movies that I watched all the time as a kid, and I loved it, and I still love it to this day. Finding Nemo has one of the best voice casts in any animated movie. Albert Brooks was perfect as Marlin. I forgot who the little kid was who voiced Nemo, but he was perfect as Nemo. And Ellen DeGeneres... Okay. Ellen DeGeneres was born to play Dory. I can't imagine any other actress in Hollywood to voice Dory than Ellen DeGeneres. She was perfect. And I think Finding Nemo has the best animation that Pixar has used in any of their movies. The water looked realistic, and it's just phenomenal what a group of people could do to make animated water look realistic. Like, these people are professionals and they know what they're doing. Alright, let's move on to number 2. And number 2 is Toy Story 3. Yep, in my opinion, Toy Story 3 is the best animated sequel ever made. I can go on all day about how much I love Toy Story 3. I think it's one of the best movies of this entire decade. The best animated movie of this decade, for sure. It was funny when it needed to be funny. It was intense when it needed to be intense. It was sad when it needed to be sad. Okay, the ending. Okay. You don't have guts if you did not cry during the ending of Toy Story 3. Like, who on earth has the guts to not cry through that scene? I'm not going to spoil it, just in case if you haven't seen it, because if you haven't seen Toy Story 3, do you live under a rock? Like, seriously. Alright, let's move on to number one. And my number one best Pixar movie is Toy Story. Whatever. I don't care. I don't care if it's cliche or not. Toy Story, in my opinion, is the best Pixar movie. It's the movie that I grew up with, the movie that I watched a lot, and I still love it to this day. In fact, I think Toy Story is the best animated movie ever made, period. The dynamic between Woody and Buzz was perfect, and it's hilarious seeing Woody trying to like sabotage Buzz. Toy Story, in my opinion, has some of the funniest writing in an animated movie ever. I think it has the best voice cast in an animated movie for sure. Tom Hanks was perfect as Woody. Tim Allen was perfect as Buzz. Don Rickles, rest in peace, by the way, was perfect as Mr. Potato Head. The list goes on. I can't name it due to time. So, how much does Toy Story mean to me? Well, if you hate Toy Story, you should never watch movies. Like, seriously. If you think Toy Story is one of the worst movies ever made, you're cynical, you are heartless, you have crap taste in movies, and you should never watch movies ever. If I hurt your feelings, I'm sorry. But that's how much Toy Story means to me. So, that's it for my top 10 best Pixar movies. And I have a question for you guys. What are your favorite Pixar movies? Whatever they are, comment below and let me know. And if you want to see more videos, just be sure to subscribe.